Stay calm, that's the message from Virginia Beach city leaders after mosquitoes carrying West Nile virus were found here.
The virus can turn serious in some people who contract it. 13 News Now reporter Chanu Her found out what the city is doing to control the problem.
On a day like today in the Kings Grant neighborhood in Virginia Beach, you can't really tell that there are many mosquitoes or that there's even a problem. But according to Virginia Beach city officials, this is one of 3 neighborhoods in the city where they've seen an increase in West Nile virus activities. And of course, city officials are telling people what they can do to keep themselves safe from mosquitoes and from the West Nile virus. For example, when it comes to clothing, wear something that's long sleeve or light in color, and also insect repellent. Adults use something with 50% DEET or less. For children, 30% or less. The city is also suggesting if you have anything outside, such as bins or buckets that can collect water, make sure those are turned over. If you have a bird bath or a wading pool, make sure those are cleaned once a week. The other neighborhoods are North Witchduck Road in Kempsville and Constitution Drive in Pembroke. Drew Langford with Public Works says this isn't uncommon. These neighborhoods historically have had West Nile positives.
From now till probably the end of October is going to be really busy with all this. So, you know, what we're telling people is there's nothing to set your hair on fire about.
Crews will be spraying the neighborhoods at night and clearing drains to reduce the number of breeding sites.
They're even checking places like horse pastures and places like that, open areas. We're checking all the parks.
The biology lab will continue to monitor and test mosquitoes and keep an eye on the West Nile virus. In Virginia Beach, Chanu Her, 13 News Now.
Virginia Beach is not the first place locally to have mosquitoes with West Nile virus this summer. Norfolk City leaders recently found mosquitoes carrying the virus in several neighborhoods: Fairmount Park, Lafayette Shores, Norfolk Industrial Park, and Edgewater. And not too long ago, mosquitoes in Suffolk tested positive for the disease. They were found in the Riverview and Azalea Acres areas. All of the cities in Hampton Roads test mosquitoes and have mosquito control efforts in place.